Peter, with hope for green technology, in your newest book, The End of the World is Just the Beginning, you point to a lot of things that people maybe aren't aware of with green tech and maybe some vulnerabilities of it. What are the things that you see that maybe might give people pause about hope for green tech, preventing climate change through electric vehicles, that sort of thing?
Let me give you the two big ones. So the first one, as the babies boomers retire, we're not only losing them as the single largest chunk of our labor force, we're also using them as the single largest chunk of our financial capacity.
Mhm.
Now, when you start a power plant, a green tech power plant, one of the great things about it is if you can get the financing, the rest of it is easy street, because 2/3 of the cost is just the installation. There's no fuel, that's free, that's the sun, that's the wind. So the financial tail of it is very small. So you borrow up front, you basically prepay 10 to 20 years of your power bill, and then you're in the clear.
Mhm.
Fossil fuel systems are different. The facilities themselves are relatively inexpensive. It's only about 20-25% of the total life cycle cost. The cost is the fuel, and that's roughly 60% of the total. Well, assuming that they're equivalent, and that's a different conversation, but let's assume for the moment that they're equivalent. A wind turbine needs that upfront financing. Well, people talk about how if you increase the cost of financing by 50 to 100 basis points, that a project fails because then the financing costs are too high. We're talking about a world where we're going to need to increase it by 500 to 1500 basis points. We're talking about a fundamentally new, different, tougher financial environment. And in that environment, very, very few solar and wind systems will be financed by the private market. And for everyone that the government does, that's something that the government is not doing somewhere else. So we've got a financial crunch just around the corner next year that starts and will not let up until we have a large generation in their 50s to generate that financial boost again. That will be the boomers, that will be the millennials, that won't be until the 2040s. So we're gonna have a big period in the middle where this is just gonna be very hard to do. Second is the manufacturing of them themselves. Right now, solar panels are assembled in China. Now, there's nothing about that technology that prevents it from being relocated. We've been making solar panels in various qualities since the 70s. But making the actual solar cells is the easy part. Assembling everything requires fingers and eyes. You can't automate that. America is too expensive. Mexico is too skilled. So we would need to find another country that we can kind of fold into the network to make that happen. If I was a betting man, I would say Colombia. They're relatively proximate. There's already a free deal with the United States. The education levels for Colombian labor is high for their standard of living, and the labor costs are kind of where the Mexicans were in the 1980s. So you can do it, but you have to build all that industrial plant first, and you have to do so in an environment when North America is already trying to double their industrial plant because of deglobalization, because we have cheaper energy, because we have a more stable labor market. So all this has to be done at the same time.
Mhm.
We're going to have some significant inflation for several years. That is unavoidable, even with good planning.
Mhm.